Hello. Today's topic is for statement in Python. For statement is also known as for loop. So to begin, I have pycharm open. So let me create a new file and I'm going to call it for. Okay. Now, in order to understand this, we will work on a sample problem. Let's say you have a list of your monthly expenses. So for January, February, each of these months, you have your total expense amount and you want to calculate the total of all these monthly expenses. So how do you solve this problem in Python? You want to use Python to track down your monthly expenses, and Python program should tell you the total result. So for that, first you need to create a list, and we are going to call it exp equal to, I will create a list. This is how you create a list, and you're going to store all your monthly expenses. So let's say in January you spend $2340. Your February expense was $2500. Your March expense was $2100. Your April expense was $3100 because it's your marriage anniversary. You have a big expense. And your May expense is $2980. If you are going with a traditional way without using for loop, then you will create a variable called total and you will add each of these individual items. So you'll say you'll do this and you will print total at the end. So when you run this program, it will print the total. So I'm going to run for. I have two files, if and for, that's why it's showing me two options. So I'm interested in executing for. So it is telling me 13,020 is the total expense from month January all the way to till May. Now the problem with this code is that you are writing a long expression here. What if your list had like 100 items in it? If you start writing all of these, you'll become granddaddy by the time you are done writing it. It's like really tedious. So a programming language should have something better, and that thing is a for loop. So let me now do the same thing using a for loop. So I'm going to comment this line. So if you use control/ shortcut in pycharm, it will comment it, or you can just put this character here. It means this line won't have any impact. So now you can say total. You can create a total variable and you can say my total expense is 0. And now you're going to run a for loop. So the syntax of for loop is this. So you can say for item in exp colon. What this means is for is a special keyword, and then you're saying item in exp, meaning for each of the items in exp list, do this. What do we don't want to do? You want to say total equal to total plus item. What happens because of this is it will run in a loop, and every time it will keep on adding this individual items. So let me run it. Excellent. So I'm seeing the same result, and see my code looks much better. So compare this code versus this code. Here you are doing a lot of typing versus here is plain simple. So now when you write a for loop, internally computer will expand your code into something which is shown in the diagram here. So as you see in the diagram, at each iteration it is taking each of these individual items and adding them into your total. So you don't have to write all the code that is shown in the diagram, but instead the for loop will do that for you, and it makes your code look beautiful and readable. Now let me show you the same thing using PyCharm debugger. So if you have seen my PyCharm intro on debugging, etc., you would have some idea on how to set breakpoints and do debugging. If you have not seen, then I would recommend going back to that video and take a look. So let me set a breakpoint here. So when you do, again, control left mouse click or use control F8, it will set a breakpoint, and you can say run debug. Okay, now I'm here. Okay, so as you see, let me expand this guy. My exp list is this 2340 and so on. You can use this step over function to go now one line by one line. So cool. So my total, as you see here, is 0, and I just enter the for loop. When I move into next step, what happens is my item is 2340, which you can see here. So the for loop, when it started, it first picked up the first item, which is 2340. My total is still 0, and I am saying total equal to total plus item. So my total is 0 and my item will be 2340. So after this statement gets executed, you can imagine what will be the value of total. So next. Nice. So you see, like, total has a value 2340, and then I am on to my next item. So when I say next item, my next item now is 2500, as you see here, and my total is 2340. So now total equal to total plus item, meaning 2340 plus item, which is 2500. So now my total is 4840. So this keeps on going until the very end. So in the end, your item is 2980 and your total is already this much. And when you say next, now see, your total become $13,020, and you are in the very last step. So now, since you have traversed all the values in your list, this will come out of that for loop. So let me hit next. So now it came out of the for loop, and your final value for the total is this, and when you run it, it will print that. So let me look at the console, and you got this value. So just to summarize, for loop should be used whenever you want to do same operation on a range of things. Okay, next thing I want to cover is a range function. What if you want to print number 1 to 10? So let's do that using for loop. So we'll say for I in range. So range is a special function in Python, and the way it works is you specify two indexes, start and stop. So my start index is 1, and your stop, as it is indicated by the tooltips. These tooltips are pretty useful. So stop index should be wherever you want to stop +1. So I want to print 1 to 10, hence I will put 11, because the second index is always your end index +1. Colon, hit enter, and then just say print I. What I means here is I is a variable that you are creating in your for loop, and that variable has a value coming out of this function. So on each iteration, range will give you one new value. So let's see what happens. So you can just run it. Nice. So as you notice here, it printed 1 to 10. Okay, so Range just gives you a range of numbers that you specify using start and index. You can use the same thing to print a square of all these numbers. So you can just say I cross I, and this will print square of all the numbers from 1 to 10. So again, run, and you see 1, 4, 9, 16, and the square of 10 is 100. So whenever you want to do this kind of operation on a range of numbers, you should use range. Okay, now let's go back to our monthly expense example. So let me create that same variable for the list again. And now what I want to do here is I want to print monthly expense along with the month number. So what I'll do is I will use a len function. So I will say for I in range len exp. So what this len will do is it will return the length of this list. So what is the length of the list? It is 5. So when you say for I in range 5, what you're doing is you are omitting the start index, and your end index will be the length of the list. So you will say print your month is I plus 1. Why am I doing I plus 1? Because in the range function I'm specifying only the end index, and if I don't specify my start index, it will be 0 by default. So if it is 0, I don't want to start from 0, I want to start from 1. That's why I'm doing I plus 1. And I will say my expense is exp of I. So again, expense is a list, so you can use an index in a square bracket to access each individual element. So I in this for loop, for the first time, it will have a value 0. So when you say exp 0, you will be referring to this value. When you say exp 1, you are referring to 2500 value, and so on. Also, as we are calculating a total, we'll do the same thing as before, create a variable called total, and on each iteration you're saying total is total plus exp of I. Let's run this. Awesome. So it is saying month 1 expense is this, month 2 expense is this, but hey, we forgot to print total, so let me do that. So you'll say print my total expense is my total, and again run it. Cool. So it printed individual expenses here, and at the end I have a total expense. So now let me just quickly show you this len thing in idle so that you know what went behind the scene. So when you have this list like this, and when you say len of exp, you see it is saying return the number of items in a container. So exp is a list, which is a container, and when you say len exp 5, so this for loop was equivalent as writing len range 5. Okay, so range usually have 2 parameters. We could have said this as well, this is starting index, this is ending index, but if you don't specify it, by default it will assume it to be 0. Okay, so you can have like this, or you can have just this, but we knew it is 5. But let's say if this list was long, you don't want to go and calculate it, that's why we had it like this. Now for loop will normally go through your entire list or entire range that you have specified here, but often there is a need to break in between you want to do some operation, and once certain goal is achieved, you want to stop the for loop and terminate in between. So let me give you the example. Let's say you lost your keys, your car keys in your home, and you now begin searching it. So you will go to different places. You will go to your living room, your closet, you will look around chairs to see if there is a key. And once you find the key, what will you do? You will stop your search. So let me demonstrate the same thing using for loop and a break statement. So let's say my key location is chair. So my keys are actually placed on chair and I don't know where they are, but I know all the locations in my home. So all the locations in my home are garage, then I have living room, then I have closet, and I have chair. So let me put chair here before closet. So I'm going to search through my home for my keys in all this location in this particular order. So again, you can use for loop because for loop is used to go through each of these items one by one. So you'll say for I in locations, meaning search each of these locations one by one, and if I is equal to, this is a comparison operator, equal double equal to sign. If I is equal to key location, then you will say print key is found in this particular place, right? And once the key is found, now you don't want to go complete your for loop, you want to break. So when you write this break statement, it will just come out of the for loop, it will just terminate in between. And if that is not the case, if I is not equal to key location, then you want to say print key is not found in I. Okay, now let me run it and see what happens. Nice. So it first went through garage and it says key is not found in garage. Then it went through living room and it's saying key is not found in living room. Then it encountered chair, and chair was a key location, so it printed this one, and then it broke in between. It didn't search through closet. So use break whenever your goal is achieved and you want to just terminate. So again, let me show you by debugging this. So just debug this, use F8 to go through each of these steps. So your I is garage, so you're looking into garage and it says key is not found in garage. Then it's living room and you're saying key is not found in living room. But third comes chair, and since key is on the chair, it will say key is found in chair and it will break. So now see what happens. So you see, you came out of the program, it didn't go through this thing. This is very useful when you are doing real-time programming and you have a list which has, let's say, 10,000 items. You don't want to just go over each of these items because it will waste some of the CPU cycles. It will be overburden on computer for the work that's gonna give nothing, right? Your goal is achieved. Why do you want to continue with the for loop and go over the remaining elements? Another statement that is used frequently in for loop is continue. So when you are running a for loop and doing same operation on list of items, sometimes for some items you want to skip that operation. So in that case, you will use continue. So again, let's work on a simple problem where between 1 to 5 you want to print the square of all numbers except the even numbers. So you want to skip even numbers. So you will say for I in range. So if you want to go from 1 to 5, you have to say 1 to 6 because it will exclude this second index. So it should be always your n number plus 1. Now you want to skip even numbers, and for remaining numbers you want to print I cross I. So let me just first run this guy. So when you run this, what's gonna happen is let me see what happened. Okay, so let's run this first. So when you run it, it is printing square of all the numbers between 1 to 5, but you want to skip even numbers, which is this and this. So for that, this is your main operation that you're doing for loop. Just before that, just say do the check for even number. How do you do a check for even number? You say I percentage 2 equal to 0, meaning if you divide it by 2 and if the remainder is 0, then you will say continue. So this continue statement, what it will do is, once you are in if condition, if it is satisfied, you will just continue from here and you will jump back here in the for loop for the next iteration. Hence you will skip any code which is written below this line inside the for loop. So if you have something outside the for loop, you will still do it. So now let's run this. Awesome. So you see the square of 1 is 1, square of 3 is 9, and square of 5 is 25, but we skipped 2 and 4. Okay, now the last thing I want to cover is while statement. So while statement is similar to for loop with a little bit difference in the syntax. So let's say you want to print number 1 to 5. How do you do that? Using while loop. So in while, you will say while and then the condition print I and I equal to I plus 1. So while loop takes only one condition, and until that condition is satisfied to be true, it will just keep on iterating. So if you run it, you will be saying 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, now be careful whenever you are doing while loop, you have to increment this counter. If you don't increment this, then it will just go into infinite loop. So what happens is, the way this works is, let me debug it. So here again I'm using F8 to go to next line. So your I was 1, as you see here, I was 1, and you printed I first, and then your I is 2, then your I is 3. So when it is here, it is saying I is 3, I less than equal to 5, meaning 3 is less than 5, hence you continue inside the loop. Now I is 5, so I is 6 this time, so now 6 is not less than 5, so it will come out of it. Okay, now if you don't have this here, then it will be pretty dangerous. So what will happen is, it will just keep on iterating and it will cause an infinite loop. So that concludes our episode. Thanks for watching.